Thank you for joining for the panel. What I'm going to do, we have several questions that's been asked by the audience and also from previous meetings that we had. I'm going to ask those questions, and including myself and three of you. Let's take turns and answer this question, then we can do discussions about that. What are the key skills that a CTO should possess to lead a high-performing tech team? Anybody wants to take a first challenge on that? Couple of minutes, quick question.
Well, they've got to be able to communicate well, just like Edgar said. That's a key piece of this. The hardest part of managing a tech org is not writing code. It's people. That's the toughest problem. So getting very, very good at communication is, I think, a top priority for leaders.
Yeah. Any other comments?
One of the things I've come to appreciate in working with organizations and thinking about just, we like to think that humans we're very advanced now. We've changed a lot, but I don't think we're that much different than our ancestors that sat around fires and told stories and learned how to work together. The fundamentals of the human experience are largely the same. So when you're leading a team and you're trying to produce a product, what you're really trying to do, if anything that's lasted, is what we now call from past cultures, cultural artifacts. So sometimes they were objects of art, but a lot of times they were common things that had some artisan approach. So we see a lot of, urns, vases, architecture, things like that lasted. And so what you have to understand as a CTO is that if you want to create a product, the product cannot be better than the culture. So being able to develop that culture and coach that team, your team, and help them develop, and being patient and going through the stages of, you don't just form a high performing team. You go through a period of formation of learning each other. There's some storm where people learn to work with each other, and then there's a normalization. But the normalization is the stage that hopefully leads to the high performing team. So and as you grow the organization, you'll go through elements of that over and over again. But realizing, you cannot expect to develop more than where your team culturally is at. And so, appreciating that also helps form your organization and other things, because you won't get the architecture or any of the quality or anything else that's not inherently part of how you organize and work together.
Thank you. Edgar?
I guess I first of all, I love your hat, John. I have to say it. Said that, and really the last couple of months, and I won't bring anything new from what Shawn and John said. I truly agree with them. The last 6 months, I am really thinking about it, pursuing a PhD in psychology, which it might it probably doesn't make any sense.
No, it does.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
A lot of sense.
Yeah. When we want to get good at technology, when we want to get good at code, we read about the hardware, we read about the CPU, we read about what makes it tick. We want to get good at managing people at scale. We've got to know social. We've got to know psychology. We've got to understand that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I think it's very important. And one of the other skills that I believe it's very important to have as a CTO is I see CTO as kind of in athleticism or in the gymnastics, a coach, or they build this human towers, a coach that is really leading that thing, but should have enough confidence to be able to jump in any of the stages and jump in there and hold on to the challenge. Like if the gymnast is falling, coach is there to make sure that is there to catch it. Okay. And I think CTO needs to project that confidence that they can, pull up their sleeves and really put in there if need be. Doesn't mean that they're going to be the best in there, but they'll jump in and do that and do a good job of it. So how do you ensure that the tech team is scalable and can handle growth and changes in technology? Welcome,
Probably I'll
Greg.
start. I think John actually did a great intro on that. I truly believe that it's about culture. You have to build a culture around that change. It's okay. I tend as humans we tend to dislike change, and I think in the world that we are today, change it has to be part of your culture. And
Mm-hmm.
handle growth, I think it's about talent. If you don't spend time on building talent, you won't be able to scale. And probably
Yeah.
that might be that sound wrong if you talk to human resources because they're more into succession and actually finding someone new. I think it's more about making sure that you have the right talent. If you do, they'll bring the right people. And if eventually they want to leave, actually it's going to be great because they're going to find new challenges and somehow involve you as well.
Mm-hmm. Greg, we're talking about how to ensure that the tech team is scalable and can handle growth and changes in technology. So while we are thinking that, John or Shawn, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think one of the key pieces of making sure your tech team can scale is, understanding the downsides of, large bureaucratic orgs and siloing and putting in systems in place right from the start to avoid that. Right? Really encourage asynchronous communication, openness, that anyone can bring any issue to the table, siloing or locking in these bottlenecks as the team grows and the demands on the org grow, I think is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I agree with
I
him.
think one of the challenges that's particular to scaling startups is there's a change in need as your team grows. You start off with, say 3 to 5 people in the technology team, and they're generally they have to do a bit of everything. So they're doing some front end, some back end. They're also doing some cloud and some security. And I see, all the time people saying, well, I need to find, I get a group from 5 to 10 people, and I need to go and, find 5 more of these, I'll say, unusually talented resources that can do all these different things. And you really have to start looking at what are the needs of the organization. So, example I use is, you've got 5 people, and let's say they all spend 20% of their time doing a headcount worth of cloud work. Well, if you add one cloud person, you're not only getting someone that can coordinate and manage the cloud aspect as a specialist, but then you can also release up about, create another headcount of coding capacity. So looking at the need for those kind of skill positions in the specifics to start building the foundation of the team, and sometimes hiring them a little bit ahead when the desperation always seems to be people that can produce features, but help figuring out what the different roles that you can bring on that will help you release those people to be even more productive, I think is very important.
Yeah. Greg?
I agree. I think that we ran into that, right? Just as John said, we didn't have the appropriate talent that we needed, specifically when we ran into an issue. So we had to hurry up and find it. And so we had to contract it at first, but we wanted to bring that expertise in house. And I think, scaling is difficult because especially if you're a startup and you may be in front of the money, right? Or the funding. And so you have to be prepared that, what technology are you trying to achieve, and then what talent do you have currently on the team that can deal with that. So it's definitely it's a challenge.
No, definitely. I think this is a very good example, and I get a chance to build several teams. And one of the things that I really like to quote from the Bill Gates. Several of you already quoted in the presentations today about Bill. And one of the early books about Bill quoted him saying, first-class people or second-class people are as intelligent, as good, and as productive together. The only difference between first-class people and second-class people, first-class people hire first-class people, second-class people hire third-class people. And I find this to be very valid. And when I hire people, I look at it is, would I want to report to this person? Would I be interested to be part of their team? And I think that makes it a major difference. And you need to find those people. Even it's very challenging in a startup with the limited budgets, etc. But it's important to have, one headcount who's very capable than two headcounts who's not that capable.
Agreed.
All right.
Agree.
So, can you share an example of how you fostered innovation within your tech team? Let me talk on that. I think one of the biggest challenges in collaboration is very important. When you have a tech team, is to make sure that they communicate with each other and they bounce ideas off each other. So I used to have a large team, multi-regional, etc. I make sure that once a month they get together and we are online or physically in the same room and open discussions. And that created a lot of innovative ideas pops up of it. Humans are great in the, computer-based, like that what we are doing now, but it's good to be once a month or a period of time, sit together around the table and discuss openly about the different things happening in the industry, in the technology. And I find that to be very, creates an environment for innovation. Anybody wants to take next?
We did similar. We had we had similar working groups, right? So we would identify specifically a project that we wanted to implement or that we wanted to start architecting. And so we would identify a working group on it and say, okay, if it wanted to be this technology or this technical process, what are all the things specifically? What are the advantages, disadvantages? What are going to be the steps to implement it? What benefit do we get from it? Or does the company get from it? And that way, does it actually become a project or does it become something, again, not to be tried on it, but the tech roadmap, right? And so we also are kind of unbridled to say what other projects outside of the current project that we're working on, future projects, would you want to work on? So it doesn't have to be something specifically that we're applying resources now, but if 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road, is there something that's in line with our competencies that we can go ahead and start working on, start designing? And then so when that time comes, and it will come quicker than you expect, is that we already have a plan and may have something in test or proof of concept to be able to get that out there. So you foster the ideation in the same process as you just kind of let it go and see where, what happens.
Yeah, for me, I think I've got the most innovation just from a culture of ownership. So I work, it's my job to set direction, but I try to make as few decisions as possible. And when we come to new challenges, let the team take the lead. I provide more frameworks for decision making and principles and things like that. And where I am asked to give direction more specifically by the team, or where I feel the need is, I make sure I talk about the reasons why, and get ownership of, get their buy-in and ownership of that decision, so they know how to drive it forward. And I find that the empowerment and ownership really drive people's creative thinking, and it gives them space to feel like they're valued, and you get better solutions and more innovation that way.
Yeah. I definitely piggyback on what John says there. I think empowering the teams to make their own decisions on tools and implementation strategies is key. And a piece of that work involves trying to bring some of the other departments out of solutioning, right? Keep repeating that same mantra. What problem are we trying to solve? Get them out of, we should do it on this, in this type of tech or in this stack or whatever. What problem are we solving? Then you're setting your dev team up for success, because now they are empowered to pick the right tools for the job. And as a result, better ownership, better quality, better outcome.
Yes.
I think it was like 6 months ago. We tried something different. So we had every team make up their own name. Human resources didn't like it because, of course, it affects. And the first thing that happened, they came with just names. I remember the security office called their name Kustos, which I think it's Greek, means like the defender. We had our data lab team. They ended up calling themselves Akma, which means knowledge. And then we asked every person every couple of weeks to come in and talk like they were presenting their thesis. But the only rule was they could not talk about technology, even though it was tech related.
Yeah.
Not that they do on their job. They came in talking about how people like music, sport. It was amazing.
Nice.
I don't, to be honest, of course, it didn't bring anything, but it did refresh their heads. I think after we did it, they were more willing to open themselves to new ideas, and I think that worked. But it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I think one of the things about a leader as a CTO is to protect the team from operational overload. Okay, and I think I see in a lot of startups is people are so worried and part of the day-to-day operation of the overall systems or solving the bugs in the product is they don't have time to be innovative and think future. So that's one thing that I recommend all the CTOs is to protect or reserve part of the time of the team. And it's not always easy, and certain periods of time you need to be, all hands on deck and making sure that, the boat floats. But you need to make sure that strategically you leave enough time for people to be innovative instead of doing day-to-day operational stuff.
Yeah,
So
we implemented a training day on our 2 week sprint cycle, and our scrum master was concerned about losing velocity. And I said, well, time away from problems, and we timed it in the sprint just right. But the time it gave, we actually saw productivity increase. So that's one of the things is a lot of time from a budgetary and external forces, you're being driven to be more productive. But the things you do that you'll think drive productivity actually work against you. So creating a little bit of breathing room will make people more productive than trying to tighten down the reins on them.
Definitely. So what strategies have you used to build a diverse and inclusive tech team? So diversity is very important, and it's proven that I don't think anybody's have a question if diverse and inclusive teams produce a better result. So any top of your mind strategies that have to build that?
This is a challenge that this industry faces a lot, and there are no easy answers. But I think, if we try to look at it from a fundamentals perspective, we can all do a better job at simply not hiring people that look exactly like us, exactly our background. Try to push hard on backgrounds that don't mirror ours. I think that's a great first step into building a more diverse team.
So I'll catch from Shawn's point, and I think we fail on doing it. I think we tend to force diversity, and we tend to force this, and I think that even though it brings great value, because I agree with you, Murat, I think that when you have a diverse team, it brings a lot of value. You don't have to force it; it will come if you understand what you're getting from that person. But I think we fail because, like I said. I think that I agree with Shawn. We have to do better in finding people that are not like us. It's easier to find people like us, whatever that means. And it's weird because, for example, us we try to do it that way. We actually are home based before COVID. We are around 80 people, and they are just around like 40 cities now. If you look from our managers, 50% are women. So we have a huge diversity, but still, I think we're failing because I don't know if we're doing it for the right reasons. So yeah.
I think one of the things is leveraging those people that's not part of your team to bring diverse ideas into the team is an important part of it. One way or another, I think is an important part. That I'm not just talking about, a male, female, or different races, different ethnicity, etc., but different communication styles. Obviously, certain roles will require stuff like all of us here. We are not shy to talk about it, but there's going to be a lot of people in the technology team who doesn't like to talk, and they do stuff and they communicate, and making sure that those are included in the overall decision making and overall diversity thought.
Yeah, I look at it from a business case standpoint. The game company Valve years ago was talking about how if your product team doesn't reflect who's going to use your product, it gets to be misaligned. So I think that's one of the challenges. And I always use the example of when Facebook first put out geolocation, it was for a dominant group of young males. And the idea that giving out location information can be a lot more dangerous for females, and there were some cases that came out
Yes,
show in the fact that you had more young single men or not or early stages of family versus fathers with daughters and things like that really change your perspective. So getting diverse experiences, age and those type of things, but really thinking about who's using your product to make sure the product it can be done with those lens. And you may not be able to fill all those roles directly in your tech team as much as you want to, but you need to do it in the organization and take opportunities because there is some self-selection in careers.
yes.
The other thing is that I've never been a fan of quotas or artificial limits on things, but truthfully, as we're growing our team, if in the first 10 hires I don't attract some female and other groups that may not be as typically represented in a technical shop, I will probably never be able to hire them because it is very tough being the first female, the first in the United States African American to come into a technical department. If it's if it's a majority white and Asian, it's just very very hard. And so you want to try to lower that barrier earlier on if you can.
Yes, totally agree.
I think
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
I was going to
Go
say,
ahead.
I think with the way that we're structured is because we are so geographically diverse. I mean, we have somebody in South Korea, somebody in Pakistan, somebody in the West Coast of the United States, and we always know the West Coast is different from the East Coast. The majority of us are the East Coast. So I think just by geographical dispersion, there are differences specifically culturally, the way to look at things. It may not specifically, like you said, it may not be a race or a certain creed or something like that. But I think in essence, diversity gets baked into a lot of the decisions or plays a part of a lot of the decisions that we make because again, our workforce is so diverse and we get all sorts of input. Something that I may say may not be understood either on a technical level than somebody in Pakistan or something like that, because it's either the language translation didn't go over, there's just something specifically. So we see that diversity as something, some concepts don't carry over, but it is nice again on the other side, as mentioned earlier, is that because they are in a different culture and a different location, we do get a diverse viewpoint.
That's great. Definitely, I think that's an important part of it, especially if you are building any kind of a product that's going to be not in a single market, but in the international market, different cultures, different personalities. It makes sense. So, what about the balance of the need for speed and innovation in technology versus security and stability of the products and technology development?
Yeah, I'm probably I'm in fintech, so I'll be careful what I say. But generally speaking, I'm the least risk averse person in any organization I work in. I ship products without password resets and things early on. So, but I think you have to figure out some base level of security that must always be there, and you have to look at the bigger things like base security around encryption and networking and layers and the things that create fundamentally good security practices. And then as you mature, you can look at adding in things like more active monitoring and more point solutions to beef that up. But it's really a matter of risk reward. And the truth is that when you're a broke startup making no money, you can't afford to compromise your customers' data. You're generally not a hard target, but also there's not really much to sue for. So if you can't, if you're judgment proof, as they say, you can't get a lot of money. There's not as much risk. So you kind of roll the dice sometimes in ways that don't fundamentally expose customer data, but maybe be a little less comfortable than if you were a larger organization.
Definitely. Any comments from the rest of the speakers?
Well, from our perspective, speed and innovation is always key. So we are looking at things like whenever we engage with a new vendor, we want to know what kind of support that vendor provides us. Do we have direct access to their engineers to allow us to troubleshoot problems faster? It's good to understand, what kind of user base is going to be accessing this product initially, and trade-offs can potentially be made there if it's a smaller base or it's an internal base. To the point made earlier about delegating security pieces and landing on a platform that already has security baked in is often a great way to move things fast initially. But I think perhaps the biggest one is just looking at how fast you're accruing tech debt and trying to determine if we can hold it at bay or pay it down at a reasonable rate, or if it's accruing faster than we're building.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I find it quite interesting when John was saying it as a CTO overall characteristic of it, I find the successful CTOs knows their passions and their limits. And this during our talks, we realized that, for example, as John was saying, that he's not that great, passionate about the security and making sure that that's happening. But you make sure that you have somebody in your team who's really watching your back on that. For me, is user interface. So I'm lousy. I can really criticize and look at the user interface. But if I create user interface or user interaction, it's going to be one of the lousiest and ugliest thing you will see. But that's one of the things that I make sure that I have somebody very dependable and that I trust next to me to making sure that the user interface is a good one. Similar to John is looking for other people to make sure that the security and etc. is there to help. I think this is the overall CTO characteristic, is knowing each ourselves and our weaknesses to be able to bring it out there.
I think part of what Shawn said, I agree with Shawn. We're trying to innovate, and sometimes when you innovate, you leave a back door open, right? So you ignore, you've got to innovate, you got to execute. The problem is sometimes you put security on the back burner. So what happens is, with again that speed of innovation or that speed to execution. If you don't review what you're releasing, what you're putting out there, and investigate if there are security issues, then there's no use of spending all the time and energy you did to get something out there quickly, because now you've just created the possibility of a breach, or again created that hole. So you have to be aware of that before you get it out completely. Is it secure? That's the question we ask. It's like, yes, we need to create things, and we need to go to the next phase and the next step, but is it secure before we put it out there?
No, definitely.
Yeah. So sadly, every time that I've tried to be fast, I've left that back door open. And every time that I've tried to close that door, well, I become slow. So something that we have been trying to do is try to build a architecture framework of security. So when we are doing our innovation, we do it inside of that. So there are like already a set of rules. Yes, we are not as innovative as we should love to be, but it helps. But yeah, I agree with the rest of the panels.
Yeah, one of the practices that I've seen in a large organizations like Facebook and Amazon that I noticed is they narrow down what they expose that feature and functionality to the audience. So instead of exposing every customer or everybody in there for a period of time, they just pick up like 10% or 1% or even smaller or 1,000 people to expose to that feature and functionality. Then after fixing all that problems, then they go into making sure that it's open to the rest of it. So that's one of the best practices I noticed in different organizations out there. Can you discuss a time when you had to make a tough decision as a CTO and how you approached it? So this tough decision could be anything from from people's perspective or technology perspective, and let's hear some examples.
So I think that you realize that nowadays my CTO or CIO perspective, it's very people orientated. Like a year ago, we had because of COVID. Well, a couple of years ago, we had to let a lot of people go, and it was really hard that time. We were around 150 people, and we had to basically cut up to 190 people. So it was hard. Um, I guess the way we approach it was actually including the other 90 people, the ones that we knew somehow that they were going to help. And we actually did something that it's not written in the book, or probably actually the book says otherwise. We actually involved people. We trust them and we ask them. And actually, we realized there was a lot of grease in our teams. We realized that probably we were not meant to be 150, we were meant to be 120. That helped a lot because those first 30 people, well, it was really easy then to give them the message. But I guess the message was including people. And there's a question that will come further, and it's amazing how people tend to amaze you if you give them the right tools and the right opportunities.
Right. Layoffs are very important. Yeah, go ahead.
I said we've had to make tough decisions, not specifically personnel based, but business partners based, right? So, or business providers, where we've developed a relationship with them. It seems to be productive. We seem to be in sync, if you will, and we're working towards a common goal. And then something completely changes. Rather it's the direction they decide that they're going to move. Maybe they got a larger client, so they pulled resources off what we're working on them with. So again, whatever that diversion may be, we've had to, unfortunately end that business relationship, and it can be, costly, not only financially, but it can be costly in where you're at getting things done or working towards getting that project complete. And so that's a difficult decision it's again, not specifically your own personnel, but you're dealing with people and you've built a relationship. And unfortunately, who you thought would be somebody that would help you get across the finish line is somebody that you have to basically terminate that relationship with.
How do you deal on that kind of situation? Like, how do you balance? I'm sure that's not just the technology, but there's a lot of IP related or business related stuff happening there. So, what are the key things that Greg, that you had to look into it, and that you were surprised to find out things like legality perspective, compliance perspective, etc.?
So yeah, so a lot of the things, again, exactly what you said, legal and compliance issues. I mean, we have to look at specifically where we're involved, where we're connected in, so sometimes it's hard to specifically make that break. It can be exhausting, because especially if I know that we've gone out to RFP, for certain things that we needed done. So you have a long process specifically of getting the RFP responses back, vetting out those partners. And then when, as I mentioned earlier, when that situation happens, or that scenario happens, now all of a sudden, you're starting from scratch, or maybe you're going back to one of the RFP candidates that, they have to go back and say, pretty much with your tail between your legs, and say that we want to work with you now, because a lot of times relationships can be burnt during RFPs, and it's just different reasons, business wise, personal wise, whatever it is. If somebody doesn't win, they're really not interested in pursuing some type of, usually a business relationship with them. So that's a weird dynamic, is when you go back and say, or you get to the point where, you figure out specifically you're going to have to start from scratch and so it's stressful. You have to identify, it's like triage, right? You have to identify what you can save with the current business partner, and what you can build on top of that, or can you even bring in contractors or hire, direct employees to maybe pick that up and move with it. And so it can be not only financially difficult exercise, it can be stressful and exhausting. And that's what exhausting, because it takes you away from that primary purpose of what you're trying to build and what you're trying to get. So
I guess that kind of stuff becomes a project, like it needs to be handled and give right timing and resources to be able to. Sometimes people just underestimate that kind of breaking a relationship, etc. How tough, and organizations have teams, especially for that large ones. But this, as a startup, is very challenging.
Yeah, and then you have legal. All right, you said contractual. Then you have legal, and so when you bring legal into any situation, it's not short.
No. What I find as well, it's and it's very tough, especially in a startup type of setup, is to document as much as possible. I mean, I was in a tough situation like that with the great developers. We built an amazing technology. Then we realized that they've been using a lot of the open source stuff, etc. But nobody really read the licenses and what it entails. So it might be great to do your personal project with that open source code, but it doesn't mean that you can just create a commercial product with it. So things like that, it needs to be very carefully documented, who use what kind of stuff, and be able to follow up. And my only savior, if in a tough times like this, is documentation. If I can go back to documentation, and I find out that kind of I had to go through a HIPAA compliance and realize that how much documentations and details we've been missing, and things like that really helps you to realize that things that may be necessary, especially at the moment that legal gets involved, it becomes even more challenging.
Exactly.
Any other tough situations? We talked about legal and business and people.
We hit an organizational one that was quite unique from my experience, where we were in that, we were in the storms, phase of organization development. We had a couple of setbacks, and there was concern that my team wasn't delivering fast enough in the face of unknown requirements and a market that was still emerging. And the business team got together and came up with this great idea for something they swore they could sell. And the CEO came to us, who also has a heavy technology background, with an open source platform, and said, just use this, hook it up like this, and deliver it, and we'll sell it. And the first platform we looked at was open source, and it was not supported at all. We found one that was a little bit more supported, and we went with it. And the team did not, we did not agree with the direction we were going, and saw lots of problems. But to help the organization, we just said, hey, they said they'll sell it if we build it. So we spent the next few months putting it together, and it launched and did not sell at all. And But from that, the organization kind of grew to show that we killed any concerns of whether we could deliver or not real product functionality. And we also gained a lot of credibility with our understanding of product and market fit as a team. So we're better off for it today, but it was a difficult time. It was on the edge of creating some morale issues with the team and things like that. But I was very open with the team about why we were doing it, and they bought into the reason. And we finally pulled out that piece of open source tech in the last major release. So, and we've grown a lot as an organization from that experience. So sometimes, despite your better instincts, you have to take one for the team and figure out how to move the organization forward, even if the technology decision doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that's a great example.
Yeah, I agree with that. The whole mentality of when push comes to shove and tempers get heated, there's going to be a moment where you are going to lose battles. But if you can professionally disagree and commit and move the business forward, the key of this whole struggle for us, because everyone in this call has a boss, is that the big challenge for us is making the complex understandable. Right? There are going to be battles we win and we lose, but the ones that we face those challenges on, we have to get very good at being able to communicate. Here's the impact, right? If we make this trade-off, this is what it's going to cost in X dollars or X support hours, or we will lose these people because they will no longer be aligned with our development vision. So being very good at communicating that is key to some of these tough problems.
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that I was in a tough situation is one of the members of the team was top-notch architect. I mean, he knew exactly what the technology and business side and had great analysis, etc. But he had a certain way of doing stuff, and he insisted on that and the strategy that we are putting it together. And I told him that the owner of the product didn't agree with that, and we went all the way to the top and presented his ideas. And he was really frustrated that nobody accepted it. And I'm one of the most controversials. I'll fight all the way to the end. But at one point, if somebody in the top, all the way to the top, you reach there and people still don't agree with you, and that's the kind of speech I had to give to this person, is to say, it's just not the right place for you. You need to go and find another place where you can really do these things, because he was incredibly valuable for my team. I really didn't want to lose the person, but unfortunately, his way of doing stuff wasn't aligned with the rest of the organization, and I had to ask him to go and find something else and do it that way. And that person has been very successful, amazingly successful, and most of the things that he warned us about and etc. became true. But it's just a reality of it that you need to make the decision at one point. Are you going to leave the ship or stay and fight? And when you should be doing it. And as a CTO, it is our job to escalate all the high as possible, if you believe, and then go back and say, hey, maybe this is not the organization for you. This is not the company, and this is not the startup. You are a very valuable person, but it's like, go and find something else.
I found it though just recently, and we came upon an issue that, and just again a smaller team, kind of that game of telephone. It was here, it was an issue, but by the time it went around the whole group, it was apocalypse. And so. Part of my role, my responsibility, because it was a technical issue, is I had to squash the, this is not the apocalypse. This is an issue and it's going to cause a problem. But I had to identify exactly what the problem was, how it could be resolved, what caused the problem, and what are the steps to move forward. And I had to take that information, I had to put all that together And I had to take that to my to my leadership and the other folks involved, or basically our internal customers that would affect. And I found that was, you had to distill all that down. And once, given all that information in a calm and collective manner, and this is specific, yes, this is an issue, but there is a resolution to it, is that it calmed down pretty quick. That fire went out pretty quick. But I think as part of, my role, my responsibility, or our roles, is that we have to analyze what the issue is. We have to identify what's causing it. And then 3 is we have to figure out what the solution is, either near term or long term, what's going to be the fix. And then, as a leader, bring that, to discuss that and to put that out there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, this is a very important part of it, definitely. So, how do you stay up to date with emerging technologies and incorporate them into your tech team's strategy?
I forget who mentioned it earlier, but the great idea came up of baking in, a certain amount or certain percentage of time for the development team to focus on, giving them freedom for, innovation and let's explore some new technologies, and that should roll up right to us. Like I try as much as I can to block off certain amounts of the calendar every week to spend some time diving into, whatever the latest tech happens to be, if it's a new language or if it's, stable diffusion or whatever. It's important to kind of stay on top of that. And the only way to do it is to truly bake it into the calendar, right? Not just say you'll do it, but put dedicated time into it. And those 20% time initiatives, developers love that. Gives them a lot of freedom to really kind of flex their muscles and show up some stuff, and some great business value can often come out of it. Your teams can surprise you. So it's worth it to push that.
I fully agree. Your teams will surprise you, and the only way to do it is put some time into it. Like, if it's not on the calendar, it won't happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think the calendar is important. The other one, I think, is one way or another to document. I don't know how each team decides to do it. I mean, I used it several times. OneNote type of an environment is a living document where everybody in the team starts putting stuff, even just a link to the information, 1 sentence, 2 sentences. I'm not talking about pages of writing, but it's just to be able to, when I go and say, I'm just making up like augmented reality or quantum, and to see like who's been putting stuff in there, who's been really reading some stuff. It really helps to look at who's been looking at it and which parts we should be actually putting it into our strategy as an important technology to put it out there. So I call it living documents. Basically, it's something that we keep track of. What are the things is people looking at it, and what are the implications toward technology strategy.
We do a lot of.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Doing some sandboxing with new technology. I mean, you can read and follow posts and different things.
Yeah.
And but like when I was creating my presentation earlier, I actually fired up ChatGPT and got some feedback from it on my presentation. I was happy to learn that some of the things I was thinking of ChatGPT hadn't learned yet, so I may still have some value. But it was a good experience of just how you try to use this technology. And I find myself now as I still think of myself as this 20-year-old in college that's working part-time at IBM, but I'm now the elder tech. And I know this whenever I first hear about a technology, and I'm kind of the curmudgeon, and I dismiss it out of hand. And I make sure that I actually engage with the younger folks on my team and really let them drive some of this enthusiasm and things and not quell it, and then see where they end up based on the principles that we've agreed on. We were looking at gRPC a while ago, and my first impression of gRPC, first one was if RPC was going to scale, it would have scaled before it had the G in front of it. And then it had elements that looked like soap. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't missing something, or I wasn't missing something. So the team went through and did a quick analysis of how they could implement it. And they came to the same conclusions that the trade-off with where we're using REST wasn't worth it. And we started seeing some of the same problems develop that you saw with SOAP. So, but it became their decision that it didn't make sense to add it into our stack versus me just dismissing it out of hand. And so that's the way I'm going to keep going with it is, and I especially love getting a intern, because interns are just bundles of enthusiasm and some healthy naivete, and they go forward without being jaded on things, and you can learn a lot from them and see where the limits of technology are when they bring that energy with them.
Agreed.
No, that's true. I think, Greg, you were saying something.
I was just going to say, we're, since we have so many people spread all over the world, we use Telegram as basically our instant message. And the problem is that it's one of those things that information starts getting added, and people would post links about, either specifically the technology or a sister technology or something that would be similar to it. So we created a separate Telegram group for ideation, for ideas, for just probably very similar to your living document, because it would be hard to get these guys to go out on Teams and actually fill out a document or add to a document. Yeah. So Telegram is definitely a lot more instantaneous, and so you have that ability to create a group that's just an ideation group, and you just throw anything on there, within reason, It's been, some of these conversations, it just starts to spur innovation, and they just, like you said, like Shawn had mentioned earlier, at some point is something that's being expressed there. Is there business value to it, and should it be something that's put on, a consideration for a future project? So like John said, you don't want to quill it, you don't want to stop it, you just want to direct it and make sure that, is there something that might grow legs to it, and give it a channel for them to put out there. So it's been extremely helpful to us.
Yeah, I think this is one thing that I learned from the new generation, is to have to use instant messaging and be able to, quickly come to the point and put it out there instead of writing 3-page document to it. And I'm very impressed by them. And that's one thing that I encourage everybody to learn from the new generation.
Yeah. Agreed.
Anything else, Shawn? You like that?
I think it's funny that we, our old school technology terms, we were all in IRC back in the day, and then now we're all in Slack using it.
Yes, exactly.
So that's a great example of embracing the youth. That's absolutely how they want to communicate.
Yes, definitely. I mean, definitely email is not something that is happening, and it's very challenging. I mean, nobody uses email in the new generation, and that's something that we get used to it, and we kind of addicted to it at one point, and it's good to move to a new way of thinking. How about how to attract and retain top tech talent for your team? What is your strategies? And it's even in the comments, I'm looking at things like, I'm looking to a CTO position. I'm hiring type of stuff. So what is your strategy for not only attracting, but retaining the top talent in your organization?
Well, first and foremost, for attracting tech talent, how I approach it is I want to make sure that fundamentally the engineers that apply for roles with my org have to love software. They have to love tech, just like I did when I was a developer. Yeah. So you make it clear that that is your priority and you want to support that and encourage that. It means making making sure that they understand they're going to get trained and support. There's mentoring built in. There's going to be systems in place for you to make sure they're successful, and that you'll be working on cool stuff, and that you're actively communicating the value that they bring. So I think this is a huge oversight that a lot of orgs make. We go into the trench with them, tell them to build stuff, but they don't even really understand why it is that they're building what they're doing. Be clear and transparent about that. This is the value you've added, right? As a result of this deployment you just released, you've saved X amount of hours, or these people that were struggling with their jobs are no longer struggling. So all of that encompasses like the joy of software development and engineering and bringing that to the table. That is what's going to allow us to bring on and retain top talent in the future. Being absolutely transparent and flexible, and working with them on establishing trust and keeping it transparent throughout.
That's very good. I mean, I read this thing quite a lot, and I totally agree. I observe more people leaves the organization because of their managers. If you have a multi-layer organization, make sure that what you are trying to do is actually reflected in your management team as well. So if you happen to be, it's not in the early stages of startups, it's not possible, but in the later stages of startup, is you need to understand if really everybody in your organization are happy what they're doing, and in an environment that they can produce their best best of themselves, best of with the happiness that they reflect at work. And that's an important part, especially for CTO organization. If they're not, as you were saying it, they're not happy what they're doing it, if they're not really passionate about technology, this is not a job for them. They might be the best techie. I mean, don't get me wrong. And I really appreciate, I would love to give them to the engineering department, and I hope they'll have an amazing career in there. But that doesn't mean they're part of the CTO organization.
I fully agree. I think that you need to make sure that your passion and what you're trying to deliver to your people, actually you find the same kind of people. So just making a very dumb example, let's say that you don't care about passion. So that's important. Tell them that you don't care about passion. And make sure that there's a real fit. Make sure that I truly believe that if you're very honest on the talent that you're seeking, eventually you'll start finding that talent. Second piece that I fully agree, it's usually people don't tend to leave because of money. Don't take me wrong. There's people that need it and they have just to move forward. But usually it's because of something else. It's because they're not receiving the right message. And the right message is not even if it's a good or a bad message. It's the real message. And people that actually they feel something and they hear something else and they feel that something's wrong. So I would say that the best way to gain talent, to maintain talent, is just keep it honest. Just show people your passion. Show people what you're meant to, and you'll start building that fit, as you said, Murat. I think that's really important. You'll start building your CTO organization.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the factors that's been noted to retain tech talent, along with, of course, competitive compensation, which is always a factor, is how often you ship code. So I've been in the IT world where you work 18 to 24 months on a project that gets canceled or ships and doesn't get used, or maybe it gets used and gets thrown away a year later. And it's the worst feeling in the world. And, one of the things that attracts people to more agile shops and startups is that, if you're shipping functionality on a monthly or quarterly basis, then what you're building really matters. I mean, there are still some folks out there that I'm sure just like to write code for the sake of code, but most people actually want what they're building to make a difference for people, and they want it to be used. And if you can offer that and make sure they're part of that feedback loop and they get to hear those type of things, then you're going to see a lot more satisfaction with their jobs and what they're doing, and it gives them reason why they do what they do.
Definitely. I think it's very important, and you see people who are working in certain technologies, certain products, that they are very happy because they see the impact of that product into everyday life or some kind of a business.
I think one of the ways that you retain top talent is you allow them to expand their horizons.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, I mean, educational. If the company can afford to, tuition reimbursement, let them, let them continue to sharpen the saw, professional certificates, whatever that may be. Because if it's specifically applying to what your company does, or it's going to bring benefit to your company, why wouldn't you pay for that education? Why wouldn't you pay? I know a lot are afraid, well, we're going to pay for the education. They're going to get a free education and leave. I don't necessarily, I've been part of that process in the corporate world where I got a degree, when I didn't want to leave that corporation once I got my degree. I felt like I could become more valuable, specifically based on my experience and my knowledge. And I just talked to a CTO recently about almost the same question. They said that they have an open policy. They're a tech company and they have multiple divisions. If somebody's interested in feels like they have a better, they have a more aptitude for a different technology, or they're interested in a different technology, and it's within those different divisions, they're welcome to apply for that position. They're welcome to even move over that and and really learn it specifically at the company if that's something that they have, again, an interest or a passion for. Because yes, you may lose that person out of one division, but you gain a resource in the other division, like you said, that has the passion, that has the willingness to learn and wants to be productive and make something. So
that's a great example, and that's one of the things that I got really praised from working a long time in Microsoft. One of the things that I had written commitments and instructions for the next year for my team, and always included a phrase saying that every 6 months you need to go and look at job openings within Microsoft or outside Microsoft and compare to you, and at least do one informational with one of the job openings. And everybody, other managers and my peers were like, "You're going to lose people." I'm like, I prefer them to be happy than unhappy here and trying to do something. And that was something that I followed up. I said, what role did you go and did you check the things? One of the other things, as you were saying it, is growing and making sure that your skills is still relevant, okay, in the industry or in the business you are in or in the company that you are in. And last 20 years, I've been putting that for everybody is reporting to me saying that you need to go every 6 months, look at the job market, if it's a large enough company within the company or outside, to see if your skills are still relevant. If not, let's go and talk and figure out what's happening there. And I think that's HR, praise me all the time for it. And yes, did I lose some people? Yes, and they've been very happy and successful. I'm so glad I did that. And there's some new talent came into the team to bring new perspectives. So I was not worried about that.
very good.
So we have a couple more minutes left, and Dimitri is going to join. What advice would you give to aspiring CTOs and tech leaders? So the people in here listening that they would like to be, some kind of a CTO or tech leader, what is your maybe let's put limit to say 3 words that say you need to have these things to be able to do it.
Be kind.
Yes.
That's my advice.
Be kind. Be passionate. I think that came up with everybody's talking, and enjoy the technology. I mean, really, really enjoy it, because otherwise, this is not a job. I mean, this is not something you can do like 40 hours a week and go home and sleep. Unfortunately, this is the weekends and evenings and readings, and I don't know how everybody believes, but I mean, I've been 35 years in this industry, and I haven't stopped learning. And it's if you don't enjoy that, this is tough to be a CTO if you don't enjoy learning new stuff.
Exactly. Lifetime learner.
Okay.
Unlearn and relearn.
I don't want to take this quote from anyone. I know someone else said it, but if you have the choice to be kind or right, be kind.
Oh yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And I think it's important that be kind is important, because you don't know what's that person or that situation is going to bring you, and who are you going to miss as well. And it's good to be kind and be able to implement there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the biggest things I've learned is to love solutions more than I love the technology.
Yes.
We're in the tech field, but you know, using the latest technology or the best technique, if it doesn't solve the problem for the person the most effective way, the technology gets in the way. So as a CTO, you got to fall a little bit out of love with the technology and put the customer and the product first.
Yeah. Wow, this has been an interesting panel, and I learned a lot. Thank you very much for everybody participating. It's a lot of great ideas, and I hope the people who are listening as well enjoyed it. And it's going to be recorded and it's going to be shared, and there's going to be a lot of tidbits and a lot of tips and experiences that's been reflected here. Thank you very much, everybody. Greg, Edgar, Shawn, and John. And looking forward to meet you in another conference. And I would like to bring Dimitri, CTO of Glorium, to join us and finalize the summit.
Hello, guys. Hello, guys. Again. Well, I guess I would like to add a couple of things to the final words. I think CTO should lead through his own example. CTO cannot demand from people what he cannot perform himself. Just not fair. Be consistent. Be a little bit stubborn. Positively stubborn, obviously, not negatively stubborn. Take critics properly. Adjust. Be lean. Be balanced. Like even in this quote, if you need to select between to be kind or to be right, I think the answer is in the middle, as usually. What else? That's pretty much it. I mean, I guess you can continue, but that should be enough for the final words. And I mean, thank you again for all participants who gave us such valuable information and shared their knowledge and experience. I appreciate their time and their effort. Thank you again. And Murat, thank you to you for leading this summit and helping us to connect to each other and to share our thoughts, our again, knowledge experience between each other. And this final note actually was very, very good.
Thank you very much, Dimitri, and looking forward to other summits. And thank you for organizing this. This has been very valuable. It's a great learning experience for seasoned CTOs or new CTOs that's coming up in the startups and aspiring CTOs. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.